Talkshoe. Recorded live.
And who are we speaking to?
This is John Risser.
Okay. And Rob Ryder just come on.
Okay.
Hey, how you doing, guys?
Hey, Rod, this is Rob. How are you?
Good.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you fine with what we're doing. I already got the recording started.
Okay.
And what we'll do is I'll let you guys have the floor and explain what is going on and what is happening.
Well, I'll do my best, right? Because I wasn't quite sure what this was going to be, because there's a lot of things to talk about. So I'm just going to let somebody kind of lead the thing, and I'll answer what I can. But
okay,
because I'm looking at you know that I'm looking at church stuff, right? I mean, I'm really looking hard at the church for various reasons, but I'm not just tied to that. I'm just tied to wherever the remedy is, because all these other jurisdictions have been vacated. So, right, where are they?
Well, that's the problem we're running in here. And John, I was introduced to him by Art, and the fact that what has happened to him up there in Virginia.
Right.
And that John had a chance to go to the diocese up there. But I want John to explain his case, how all this came about.
Me too.
The stupidity of the court system.
Right.
All this. So, John, go ahead, open up what you talked to Art and I about, and we'll just go with it and just cover the church side of this thing.
Okay. Well, I don't have a driver's license. I don't have or use a Social Security number, date of birth, last name, just things that we've decided for our religious beliefs. We just don't use those. And based on study and conviction and basically everything that we've learned and who we are, and we just decided that we need to walk a certain way as God's chosen people, and to live harmless and blameless and not be entangled or made merchandise of according to the Scriptures. So we decided to not use all those things. And my children, they are teenagers now, 18 and younger, and they never had Social Security numbers and that types of things. However, one of them, of course, recently has also been caught up by the dragnet of lawlessness that.
Yeah, it isn't like you haven't been persecuted for your beliefs, right? You have your beliefs, you're telling us them, but have you been persecuted for those beliefs?
Oh, most definitely. I spent 105 days in jail because they said I was obstructing justice because I would not associate with Social Security number, date of birth, anything. I just wouldn't give it any of that because that isn't who I am. Right. I wasn't given a last name. So and I even put a letter into the judge. I put one in for my son recently, and I said, open this court in the name of the Lord, and the judge says, oh, we're not going down that road. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, it's, I've spent 100 and some days in jail 4 years ago. Now I got arrested 2 months ago in Maryland. The same thing, driving without a license, no seatbelt, and failure to display a license, and just got convicted on all three of those last week. Actually, I think it was this past Monday. Would not let me put in a bill of particulars, would not let me have the officer read the law on the stand, couldn't do any of those types of things.
Right.
He wanted to call me John Doe, and I said, I'm not John Doe. They keep accusing me of being John Doe. But I told him from the beginning, my name is John Risser. And so the judge said, well, if you're not John Doe, you're free to go. So I turned around, started packing my bag, and headed out. But on the way out, the district attorney, or whatever they call it, state's attorney, I'd like to amend my case, judge, and blah, blah, blah. So they said, okay, make it John Risser Layman. I said, no, that's not correct either. I already told you. My name is John Risser. And, well, Mr. Risser, no, you can't call me Mr. Risser. You may call me John. And he says, well, John, if you wish. And so he kept saying that over and over and over again the rest of the court time. So, no, they wouldn't do anything according to law, due process of law. Of course, they want to charge you more than $20 and not have a jury trial. all types of things. So I will get a recording of that. We just found out today how to do that through the mail. So that Maryland does actually record them. So it should be an interesting listen to when I get it.
Right. So that's what happened, and in that time we tried to go to the church because the church is supposed to have criminal jurisdiction. Ever since the Council of Trent, they said the bishops will have criminal jurisdiction and he's supposed to pick the court. And so you were trying to contact the different dioceses to find somebody that could lead you in the right direction.
Yeah.
Right? But,
yeah.
And as usual, right, they don't give you the answer you want to hear, and it's always confess and avoidance and all sorts of things. But so it isn't that it worked, but it's there and it's supposed to be used. And so the next thing we're going to try is to do this thing called hierarchical recourse, because somebody has made an administrative decision who may not have the executive power to have done it. And so we wanted determination. Basically, we wanted judicial determination of their decision to deny us justice, and that would be a petition to the diocesan bishop. And that's what we're trying to do right now. In fact, Roe has one that she has sent. And, so we can talk about that procedural stuff in a bit, but you went to the part of you tried it, and they came back with a letter said they weren't getting involved.
Well, that was the Richmond Diocese. However, that because this happened in southern Maryland, Charles County, I spoke with an archbishop, judicial vicar from there, and he said I went to the wrong jurisdiction. So, of course, they couldn't do anything about it. I went to the wrong jurisdiction. I should have went to the Archdiocese of Washington, D.C., and I found that out, of course, after I had got the petition back 30 minutes before I went into court for my son. In any event, I went to the wrong place. So now I know where I'm supposed to go, and we know a little bit better the procedure, what to do.
Right, but, my thing is I have to rebut their decision to say I went to the wrong jurisdiction. There's only one church. It covers the whole world. Right? That door there is as good as any other door I go to. I should be walking in to the jurisdiction of the church to point out a matter of faith and sin, basically, because somebody's using color of law and a simulated legal process to put your ass away. Right? That's all human rights violation, and it needs to be treated as such. And I'm just saying from my own experience now, having put in numerous pieces of paper to numerous places in the church and pointed all this out, doesn't mean they're going to do anything with it. Right? They really are making it so you have to find the door. Straight and narrow.
Well, see, that's the problem with all this, is the fact that when they attack us, it's carte blanche. Mm-hmm. When we go after them, then we have to find that little crack in the wall that is the right crack.
Right.
In order to go after them, because we just got paperwork back from the Department of Justice of Office of Professional Responsibility on my D.C. case, bringing charges against the prosecutor and against the judge. And they're coming back and saying, well, because this is a case going on, then we have to allow the court to proceed before we can interfere and make any decision. And no, you were told about a crime on your side of the fence. There is no conviction on this side, and wait for you to decide after I've been convicted whether your side committed a crime or not.
Well, the thing is, Rod, they're not courts. See, we got to even quit giving them the frickin' satisfaction to call themselves a court, because there's nobody in there that's been elected to office. I did 3 videos on this, right? You can look at the paperwork and say, this dude isn't elected. The county clerk, the court clerk, the treasurer, the councilman, the judge, none of them have been elected properly. They're all de facto agents who have usurped a state office for public gain, right? So they're just part of a crime syndicate that could be called the mafia. We may call it something else, but their ass was just excommunicated by the church. Right? All them people, they should all be excommunicated from the church and have their patrimony, this all capital letter name we have, the estate, have it shut off, and they'll learn a lesson in a second. But
well, see, this is what we've come back in and proven is the fact that we may use the word court it may not be the right word, but it's what we're walking into. But we went back and showed that these people are under international law. They're under a corporation. They rescinded their public office under that 14th Amendment whenever they created the District of Columbia in 1871.
Right. So we can agree right now they're not holding an office, right? They rescinded the office.
They rescinded.
Okay, then they have no power.
That's exactly what they don't have. The problem of it is when they handcuff you out here in the street.
I don't disagree, Rod, but they just went from law to color of law, and color of law is a civil rights crime against humanity.
Exactly.
So that's what we're trying to bring the crime as, is a crime against humanity, not the fact that it's a traffic case. No, they're using color of law against me, and that's a freaking crime against humanity.
Well,
where's that jurisdiction?
That's the point, and that's what we're bringing up in this new paperwork, is that they're charging us under the Trading with the Enemy Act to bring this in as an enemy of the state. But the problem of it is, it isn't the state that's charging us. It's that de facto corporation that's impersonating that's bringing the charges against us.
Right. Correct. Who has no jurisdiction over you, and so it's a human rights violation. The problem is you can't take it to their courts because they're not courts. They're not going to do anything about it. This is the way the business runs.
Yes.
Right. And so we hope it's the church by saying, well, look, this is a crime. You have penal codes against this kind of stuff. That's a falsehood. A falsehood in an ecclesiastic document. Anything that has a notary seal, in my opinion, is an ecclesiastic document because a notary is an ecclesiastic office. If you lie on that, that's an ecclesiastic sin. I can take you to the church court.
Well, see,
when somebody tries to take your property, like a foreclosure, and they're using a fictitious plaintiff that doesn't exist at all, you can't find them online. They don't have a certificate of good standing like a corporation, right? They don't exist. Well, that's a crime, man. It's like, well, okay. So all these things should be taken to the criminal jurisdiction, and the only jurisdiction we ever see is the property side jurisdiction, non-contested matters. It's a non-contested property hearing. Although we can bitch and moan all we want, they're not telling us where to put the paper in to get it into the criminal side to point out the fraud.
Well, see, that's one of the things that we have been able to come back and prove is that there is no criminal jurisdiction in any of these courts, whether it's a state court, whether it's a federal court.
Right, the church has it.
Because from what we have pulled up out of state documents when it comes down to criminal jurisdiction under their criminal rules, it shows that they may have venue. It shows that they may have penalties, but no place does it give them jurisdiction because it said it's been revised for future codification.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing in Title 28 under jurisdiction that gives them anything for criminal. It's all civil. But when you come under Title 50, under the War of National Defense, under that Chapter 3, Section 23, that's where they're claiming their criminal jurisdiction as they're bringing us in as alien enemies of the state on this thing. And that's how they're getting away with it.
But nobody fills out a complaint. There's no complaint. I don't care what the fucking paper says. There's no complaint.
That's exactly right. And that's what we're coming back in.
Color of law. It's a human rights violation, and I need to have the court to take it to. And so just a couple days ago, a guy named George from Virginia called me. I'd never talked to him before, and he talks really fast, much faster than I do. I had to get oxygen just listening to him. But he went back to look at these things, and I think this makes a lot of sense, Rod, because a long time ago I knew there was no local jurisdiction, right? Because that would be us. We should be the government at the local, the very smallest republic, whatever Jefferson had called that republic, right? The elemental republic, I think he called it, like a township.
Yep.
Right, and then it goes to the state, and then it goes to federal, and blah blah blah. But there's nobody there. Nobody has their oath filed, right? Nobody has the right bond. They're not taking the oath that's in the Constitution. They're not doing any of this stuff. So none of these people although they go through the motions, are actually holding an office. It's all a fake act. Well, then it turns out it's the same with the state. And so in 1866, they had the Civil Rights Act 1866 that says if somebody's using color of law against you in a court, you're supposed to go to this other act from 1863 and find the remedy. And sure enough, in there it says you should put a petition into your court case, ongoing court case, asking to have it removed to federal jurisdiction because they're using color of law against you, you know, as prescribed in this particular law. And it's an act of Congress. And acts of Congress are the supreme law of the land, and it does give the lowercase federal court jurisdiction. But they don't want to take the paper. It's like they don't exist either. So it could be it has gone to international now, and it's this thing called the American, or the Association of American States. Because I was just looking at it, they have a petition you can fill out for human rights violations. And the United States is a signatory to the treaty. And George was, you know, pointing this out to me, and it's a big, big story. I mean, you know, when you get behind the scenes, what happened. But in a nutshell, at this end, there's a petition you can fill out to an office that's in Washington, D.C., that it acts like the counselor for this Association of American States. And if you have a complaint against a member company or country, you're supposed to bring them the petition for human rights violations. It's pretty powerful stuff. It's like, oh, maybe this is where it is. I just know that it isn't where we've been looking. I know it's not in the local, it's not in the state, it's not in the federal. So who's got it? Who's got the jurisdiction? Now, if you can find lowercase federal because you could use, the advantage of using an act of Congress is it is considered by the Vatican, as a matter of fact, a self-executing treaty. Whatever it says, that's the law, and that's the supreme law of the land, and it's what gives the lowercase federal courts subject matter jurisdiction in the matter. But I think you have to point out these particular acts of Congress, or I'm going to fill out a petition and send it to this place in Washington, D.C. and say, look, if they're using color of law against me, that's a human rights violation. I'm going to let you figure the rest out. That's what you should do, Rod. Take your paperwork in and say, look, there's no court seals. Just find all the omissions on the paperwork and point it out to them. Boom, 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 boom. And, right? I say that this is color of law and simulated legal process, and that is a crime against humanity. It says so right here in your laws.
Well, this is part of what we're pulling up, Rob, is the fact that under the Transit Enemy Act, we're supposed to be able to file into the alien property custodian, and they're supposed to give us a certification of our standing on this, that we're not an enemy of the state. And see, this is where the license and registration comes in. When they did that 1917 deal, the license and registration was to give you permission to deal with allies and enemies of the United States. Mm-hmm. And this is why I believe they got that definition, that a license gives you permission to do something illegally that normally would not be allowed. I think this is where they come up with this.
Right, and I believe you're correct that they have us as enemy of the states, but that the remedy to that is in this act that was from 1866, which references one from 1863, that says, during the ongoing rebellion, because this is during the Civil War, and there's never been a peace treaty, so my opinion is, right, the Civil War.
Let me hit mute, and I'll bring you two back in, because I'm getting people to pop in on this.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Rob.
That's okay, yeah. In fact, Ro may show up. If you see Rosita or Ro, that would be her. Who does a lot of this research with me out of Illinois, and I talk about her quite often. So, unfortunately, Rod, I lost my place. Oh no, the act. So if the civil war, if there was never a peace treaty, then the ongoing rebellion is still going on. It's still a war against the states and the federal government. The Union and the states are at war with each other, and we're, in between, being seen as a belligerent. But they have to have indicted you, and there had to have been a trial. They can charge you with it, but was there ever an indictment? So
well, they did a grand jury, yes, but that grand jury was misinformed like a lot. They was told, this is the only way you can make a decision, that's it.
Well, did the grand jury say that you, Rod Class, is an enemy of the state, right?
No.
I don't believe that's happened.
Nope.
Okay? Well, since that hasn't happened, you're supposed to go to the lowercase d district court judge, and the judge is supposed to, and have a hearing with the judge and have him release you from the charge because it's a lack of prosecution. And you're supposed to take an oath and, probably put up a small bond, right? Become a citizen of the United States or something like that. The remedy's right in there to do that for what you're speaking of. That first they put the remedy in, and then the next act they put in the frickin' defect. Now we are going to make you an enemy of the state, right? The remedy's behind you. It's in 1866. Going to the Act of 1863 that talks about these juridical acts. And this is one of them, that you have been charged as an enemy of the state. There's never been an indictment, though, so the district judge is supposed to give you a release. What's so hard to understand about that? Now make them do it. That's the hard part, but, yeah.
Well, this is the problem here with all this, is we're not able to, even if we come in with all this stuff, we don't have the ability of enforcement to force the judge to come in compliance with all of this.
He's not a judge. He's a member of organized crime. He didn't take the right oath, man. He's not a judge. He may want to say he is, but I'm not giving him that right. No, you're not a judge.
Yeah,
you're a usurper in office. Your ass should be in prison. Right? This is, how many different 18 USCs can you pull up that the guy's doing right there on the bench?
Well, yeah, I pulled up quite a few of them.
Yeah.
And they're violating every position of it.
Yes, they don't follow any procedures, right? The third step in a federal criminal court, like you're in right now, is for there to be a complaint, sworn to by a complainant. Have you seen yours yet?
No, when I challenged that, they told me, well, the complaint is the statute that you broke the statute. I said, wait a minute, let's back up here. If you want to go that route, let's talk about the statutes that your man over here violated. And I started running down through the entire USC codes of statutory violation on his side of the fence.
Right. However, you could have said, well, then what you're telling me is you're using color of law and assimilated legal process against me, and that's a crime against humanity. Is that correct? Or am I free to go?
Yeah.
We have to quit saying that it's a court because there's nothing lawful about what they're doing. They're organized crime. It's just the biggest organized crime syndicate in the history of the world. And it was set up. It was set up by the Freemasons, and it's a godless society, and that's why they don't want you to bring God in the courtroom. And if they tell me they can, I said, then I can't fucking be here, right? Excuse my French. But no, you're not telling me I can't bring God in the courtroom. Who are you?
Well, see, again, if they're running under ecclesiastical law, now we got a problem here, because if you're running under ecclesiastical law, then you ought to be able to bring that stuff in.
You're darn tootin', right? It is an ecclesiastic law. It's the law of the Mormons. They don't have a God. They have a frickin' angel, Lucifer.
That's true.
Right? That's who they are, right? So it is a matter of good against evil, right? When we get down to that level, and that's why I started looking at the church again, because right around Easter, I heard the Pope say, he was quoting the angel, "Why are you looking for the living among the dead?" I said, you're right. This is all the property stuff we're looking at, because it's all a fictitious entity. Ritluski, Robert Allen. That's the guy that shows up on a docket sheet. Who the hell is that? Right? It ain't me. That's not my name.
Yeah.
I'm suffering an enforced disappearance of my person, which is Robert Allen Ritluski, my natural person name, because they won't use it. They won't sue me in my own name. They'll put it as a fiction and make it a property hearing and say, well, you didn't contest it, right? You didn't take it to the right court and say that you had a problem with it. So,
Well, where is the avenue going through the Vatican side of this?
Well, this is why, Rod. If you look at Israel, right? If you just said that you were of the Jewish religion, you could be a citizen of Israel. It's that easy, right?
Yeah.
Well, the Catholic Church has got their own sovereign state also, and they can say, well, if you're a Christian, you're a member of the Holy See. Not a Roman Catholic, a Christian, period. Right? You believe Jesus Christ is your Savior? Yep, good enough. Boom, been properly baptized? Yep, you're in. Right? We got our own rules. You can't lie. You treat your brother like yourself. That's what we do over here. And now you would have their protection. We should be citizens of the Vatican City State, but our paperwork has always been kept local at the parish and not put into they're called particular churches, which is the diocese cathedral, and that's the only building jurisdiction that's tied directly to the Holy See. Everything else is corporate. Right? Like there aren't any priests out in our parishes. There are deacons who are called priests because they're part of the presbytery, but they're not an ordained priest. And that means, so all this means something to a Catholic, right? That the only ordained priest, it looks like, could be the bishop. So he has the only church, and that church has a particular jurisdiction. This is my opinion and what we're trying to do right now by going to the diocese bishop with a petition that says, hey, our rights and interests within the church have been damaged because our records aren't in the correct jurisdiction. And have him do whatever needs to be done to get us put in so we can have the citizenship of the church. And for that, this church is set up like the very early Christian church where all the property was communal. In fact, in the Bible, the Apostle Peter, or the Apostle, was it Peter? Yeah, he killed a man and his wife because they lied about what they got for their property when they brought their money back to the communal pool, right? That's how it's supposed to work. And we've all been given an inheritance by the Creator, and that all capital letter name is your property. It's your sole proprietorship, and you're the sole proprietor. Should be. Right now, somebody else is administering it for you, and if you look at your check, when you sign a check, at that line below where you sign on mine, it says authorized representative. That microprint. I'm the authorized representative of my name. So saying I'm not the owner, and I'm going to disagree and say, yeah, I am the owner. That's my property. So these are the things that would happen if we could just change our citizenship and claim what is supposed to be ours in the church by baptism. You were given an office in the church by baptism. So says Jesus Christ. And the church says you have been. They just don't want to give you the piece of paper that says that you have the office. Right? Your citizenship paper. And so what we're supposed to do, in the perfect world, is we're supposed to get everything we need by signing our name, develop our skills, and go give them away for free. Right? And then society takes off, and we got George Jetson vehicles, and we're going to other planets and under the seas, and all the other stuff we'd really like to do instead of this slave system that we're involved in. We just need to step across the line and get the church, but the church has got bad people in it too. Right? The devil's in the church. The Catholic Church says that Satan lives in the Vatican.
Well, yeah, that's part of our problem here, because it doesn't matter who we seem to go to.
Mm-mm.
We got to find a honorable person someplace who's willing to step up forward, because on this Vatican side, I definitely agree, because through history, the Vatican has really taken jurisdiction over all the landmass whenever they were originally discovered for their domain on this stuff, and they put the people under their protection.
You got it right. They planted the first flag and said they're claiming it in the name of the Pope, and then everybody else came afterwards, but the Pope was still first in line, first in time, and that does mean something, even to these crazy-ass people that run the system.
So there ought to be a way that we ought to be able to go through.
The way, Rod, is Vatican City State has its own set of laws, it's its own sovereign state, and so forth and so on, right? It's got its own law system, laws, and whatever. Well, last year in the summer, Pope Francis came out with that motu proprio that said that if you administered the patrimony of the Holy See, that you were under these laws. And it kind of defined who public officials were, right? And I said, okay, I can make that pretty much anybody, as far as I can see. So for sure, it says anybody that's in contact or subjective to the Roman Curia. Well, that would be all the dioceses you see around, all the priests. They're all under the Roman Curia, so they're all under this law from Vatican City State. And what I haven't figured out yet is how to get information to the prosecutor to have him prosecute. They call him the promoter of justice. And so we're trying to do the same thing over here and just get to the criminal jurisdiction in the church, and that's what hopefully John can tell us he's going to have some luck with, because whatever his next step is. What are you going to do, John?
Well, that's what I'm not sure. I talked to a canon law advocate today, and he didn't seem to want to, or he said he personally did not have the skills or the understanding to take what I was talking about, the color of law and the simulation of a legal process. That is actually of course, a crime against humanity, but that's a matter of faith and sin. It's not just strictly a civil matter. He said he personally could not take that at the moment because he wasn't sure. He doesn't have enough information. And, of course, I can give him a whole lot more information, but he wants a whole lot of money. So that's probably not going to happen at the moment. But
look, what you need to say when they say that, well, you don't have a choice, man. I just appointed you. I don't think they have a choice.
Well, now, he's actually in private practice, this particular one.
If he says he's a canon lawyer, then I can appoint you. That's what the law says.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But he said he didn't have the skills to even.
Well, that's fine. I appoint you to find me somebody better. You go find me the guy I need to, and I'll appoint his ass, right? Just go to the next one, but make him do it. Because this is what they're really good at, is not doing anything by saying, well, I can't, or, well, you need to talk to these people, or, no, you go talk to them and bring me back the answer. Right, I called you, and if you don't do it, you'll be on my complaint.
I believe I do have one man who is a very reverend who actually is going to help. So he's been very helpful so far.
Okay. But let's down to something very basic and simple here. Are not supposedly these judges and bar members under the Vatican to start with?
They are notaries. I just saw one do an oath the other day. He took an oath right there in the middle of the courtroom from somebody else.
Yeah, right. If we can that a notary is an ecclesiastic office, then yes, they are under the jurisdiction of the church. Absolutely. That's why these are ecclesiastic documents that you take into a court case, because it's got a notary seal on it.
All right, but what the point I'm trying to get at is if they are under the church side of this as priest, whatever you want to call these people.
Mm-hmm.
If we go to a diocese, which is their superiors, then their superiors ought to be able to walk in and jerk their chain.
Well, you're right, and that in doing that is called a hierarchical recourse, right? You went to the diocese and you asked somebody to do something for you, and they said no. But do they have that's an administrative act to not do something for you. It's an administrative act. Well, do they have the authority, the executive authority, to make that decision? Right. That's what we're challenging, is the fact that they've done that. But if I'm going to challenge the fact that an administrative act has caused me harm, I'm going to say it's because you didn't take my record and put it into the Holy See's records, so that I'm a citizen of the church, or I'm going to go for it all, and the rest of it will just go away on its own. I want them to give me my citizenship in the church because it's a perfect society, just like a state is. And I have the right to, it says in canon law that you acquire the domicile of a diocese or parish after 5 years, paraphrasing.
Yeah.
Right? Well, domicile means that is the venue or the jurisdiction that you can be sued or sue in. And they just said in canon law, I now have the domicile of a diocese. That put me under the church's jurisdiction. If somebody wants to charge me with something, they got to bring it to the church court. Right? They can't take it to the civil court.
Well, this is the whole point. If technically these people, from the different things that we have discovered, heard, is that they come under the Vatican side of this thing, administratively.
Right, and that would be the Vatican City State, like I was talking about, where because that motu proprio, they are under the Vatican City State law, but the Vatican City State law has its own prosecutor over in Vatican City State. I don't know what the local tie is between the two, but there should be one. But certainly he's over in Vatican City State. There's a prosecutor called the Promoter of Justice.
But there should be like the Attorney General for the way this country was set up. You got the Attorney General and you got assistants underneath him.
Yep. He's gonna prosecute for the public good. Not just because it's good for you, because it's good for the public. What you're pointing out is a crime, needs to be taken care of, blah, 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 and they're going to prosecute it.
So we should be able to go
I just haven't been there yet to try sending him something, but that's what, one of the things on the pipe is to send him an information and say, hey, this is what's going on. What can you do to help us?
Yeah, because that Vatican, the diocese ought to be that door that we should be able to walk into, file our complaint, and at that point, they should be able to administratively remove these people from that position pending an investigation so they don't do any further harm.
Yeah.
And if there is a case where they would get, excommunicated?
Right. Yep. Now, the thing is, right, the church could have this all set up in something that so it isn't actually touching the church directly so that people don't get afraid of the church. And that's what this Inter-American Commission on Human Rights is. They have an office in Washington, D.C., and that's where you're supposed to put a petition in to an international tribunal because your member state is committing a human rights violation against you, and that's what's happening to you right now, Rod. You're being persecuted with a human rights violation, so you need to give these guys a petition. That's the other door, right? So I'm going to be trying both of them. I'm just saying there's another one that George just pointed out, that this Inter-American Commission on Human Rights is the tipping point of what he pointed out. He pointed out a lot of stuff, but it's in Washington, D.C., and you can send them a petition. So I know that you've been to Washington, D.C. numerous times. Hell, you can drive there and sit across the table and give them your petition. Right here.
Yeah, no, I'm sort of banned from D.C. Put bracelet on to keep me from coming into this place. They don't have a good sense of humor with me.
Well, then that's why we use phone calls too. We just make a phone call to them. But so on the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, if you Google that, you'll find their website, and you can download this PDF that has the petition form and information, and I just did it myself a little bit ago, but I don't have my computer on to send it to you, or I can send it on email.
I'm pulling up International Human Rights Commission.
It's on the
American Commission on Human Rights. INTER, American Commission.
Okay.
On Human Rights.
They also put it on the chat board on the computer if you're on there.
It's a big name, but
this is what we're trying to find is that we know everything they're doing violates human rights on the way that they're doing it.
Yeah. So it isn't about the traffic ticket or the gun charge or any of that stuff or the foreclosure. No, that's just evidence of a human rights violation, the way they're handling it.
Yes.
That's going to be your evidence, right? That is your evidence. You just need to point out it's a human rights violation.
Yeah, because like I said, they can never produce. They could never produce any victims on their side of the fence. Only thing that they're producing is statutory violations.
Right. Yeah.
On their side, but the statutory violations are taken totally out of context to how they were originally written in the statutes at large. And that's what we're coming back in and proving. That's what's got them so upset. A lot of that we're doing is we're coming in and tearing their paperwork apart, showing how they violated their own position under their own definitions.
Yeah. Look, and I'll never tire from telling this little story, so I have to tell it, right? I'm researching all these things about these offices and how they're supposed to be elected, and you know, the paperwork they're supposed to have to be a county commissioner or a county clerk or judge or whatever.
Yeah.
And I got a copy of a judge of probate, a copy of his oath, and there's a seal on there, and it's supposed to be the Great Seal of the State of Michigan. And on the Great Seal of the State of Michigan, you have a moose on one side of the shield and the elk on the other, and they're both got their hooves up and they're facing this shield in the center, right? And it's got an eagle on top, blah, 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 blah. On this seal, Rod, and this is on a probate judge's seal, on this seal, the moose is looking back over his back. It's a counterfeit seal. It's like, you know, it's as blatant as it could be. That is not the seal of the state of Michigan. The moose doesn't look over his back. He's looking at the shield. They don't hide the fact that this is color of law, simulated legal process. I mean, it's all over the place to find the evidence that it's happening. And simply by you having been taken into a court, as they want to call it, is evidence of color of law.
Yeah.
Right? So we have the evidence. We can use our court cases. Just what's the proper procedure, and you know, where do you find justice?
Well, that's always the problem here. Where do we find the justice in all this stuff? Because we can't do within the system, because the system has been taken over, like you said, by thugs and
right.
Because when they discovered in the 1930s how the mafia worked, our government patented their whole setup off their way of life. You know,
there you go, right? Yeah. What system works best? Oh, we like that one. We're picking off the menu. We're going with that system.
Because if you really go back and think about it and understand the historical side, when they busted these people back at that time, what they were doing, it was ingenious the way they was getting around it, and the government found a way to use it to their benefit and change it from a government to a private corporation under the mob.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and where would the mob have learned that, right? What they did is they got rid of what used to be a Christian nation over in Europe, and they made them into nation states that were God or church and state were separated, right? So there is no God in their system, and if you try to bring God in, they don't like it very much, and they'll tell you can't do it. And some people have cleared the courtroom by saying it. With John, when he said it, he said, we're not going there. I said, well, you can't stop me. I'm going to do it again. Right? If God can't be here, neither can I. Right? You're a heretic. You've been excommunicated. You can't hold the office. Just lay it on them. I mean, what do you got to lose? If you're going to be persecuted, go down proclaiming Christ.
Yeah.
Right? And say, you know, whatever, right? Whatever the test is, God, let's get it over with and get me on the other side of the fence, man. Let's go. Because one of the times I went to jail, or I spent 7 days in jail this one time, and I had to go to traffic court, and I had put in these 3 criminal complaints. I called them pleas of the crown at the time. I put 7 of them out at one time, and 3 of them went to this particular district court. And so now I'm in jail because I didn't want to pay my electric bill mainly. And I have to go to this video court. And so she starts the thing, and within just a minute, she sets her paperwork aside, and I see somebody handed her some papers, and she says, but what I really want to talk to you about is, and she had these complaints I had written. And so she's going through them and saying, you know, I had to really study these, and we spent a lot of time looking at them, and, you know, I want you to know I really spent a lot of time studying them, and blah. And she said, and it's not that you're not correct, right, which means I was correct. It's not that you're not correct. I'm just not inclined to issue any warrants. So what she told me is, okay, what I had pointed out, that they were, because I had pointed out they were using color of law, because it's right in the penal code of Michigan. You know, that all that shit is true. It's just where is, and it does exist, because if it didn't, we wouldn't be here. I mean, God must be here or we wouldn't be here. They'd have us all dead by now.
Yeah.
It's either that it's either just moved up one more notch where it's all international and we're part of the Association of American States, with the United States as just one signatory of 35. It could be there because the Vatican is a big fan of international law, so this is international law. And I got to tell you this one last part, and then I'll get off this soapbox on this, because this is something else I'm looking at because of what George told me. There was a guy named Rourke or Roach, or I don't remember his name. He was a Russian back in the 30s, and he put together this peace pact, and they came up with a banner of peace. And he wrote up like an article of confederation or something like that, which eventually became a treaty that was signed on by the United States and everybody else. And they said that things with ties to culture, history, art, so forth, were protected, as were the members of those institutions. Well, the church is certainly a cultural icon. And so there's this thing where there's this banner of peace that represents a document, an agreement that was signed by these states, international states, and but it goes down to having jurisdiction over the individual. And so when we're putting our complaint into this place in Washington, D.C., this is kind of an outgrowth of that right there, is that that's the place that has jurisdiction over these things, and we have protection because of this thing called the Banner of Peace. And when I get it all together better, because he told me just the other day, and I've been working on cars, I really haven't had a chance to put it together. You know, I'll make a presentation on it and show how it ties together. But what I wanted to point out today is, you know, there's just another avenue to put a petition in at the international level to point out human rights violations, specifically against the state that you live in for performing it.
Yeah.
Well, hell, that's what we're suffering right now. So, yeah, let's give them a petition. So, good stuff.
Well, yeah, all these are avenues that we need to proceed on, because it ties in, because you and I both know we are under international jurisdiction, the way they set this country up in 1945.
Okay, good. Let's not, and we can say that's good or bad or it's neutral, but maybe can we make it good for us, right? And maybe that's why this Association of States is good for us. It's like, okay, well, here's what a court is. And they have a place to send in a petition if somebody's violating your human rights, so why not? But the other place that is, to me, is through the church, going to the Vatican. But instead of trying to send it over to Italy, I should be able to go someplace local and give it to them and get the same effect.
Well, yeah, that's my understanding of that. That's my concept, that we should be able to walk into any of these dioceses, bring forth a complaint, and have them go back in, look at it, and says, okay, this is a legitimate complaint. They go back and do an investigation, grab the judge, pull him off to the side, says, hey, has this paperwork come across you? Yes. Or you do realize these are human rights violations that this guy's pointing out to you and you are ignoring them?
Exactly.
And the fact that if you're going to sit here and you're going to claim that you're a judge, you're going to claim that you hold position over this gentleman or over this lady, that if you proceed in this manner, that we're going to have to be forced to take you off and excommunicate you and take you out of circulation.
Right. And everybody else in the courtroom that's involved in it, because it would be nothing but, organized crime. It's RICO.
Yeah, exactly.
I agree. Now the place I think you go. Now this is the thing, right? They have the church has a corporate side, and then it has a temporal side. So it's got. When you see a building that says like the Diocese of Grand Rapids, that's where I'm at, right? To me, that's the corporate side of the church. It's where all the offices are, and they walk around drinking coffee, and they run like a business, run just like a business. But if you go to the cathedral, well, that's the. And you read what a cathedral is, that's where the bishop's throne is. So if he's going to be playing king, it's going to be over there, not over in the other building. That's where the throne is. The seat is in the cathedral. And these cathedrals are considered particular churches, and they make up the body of Christ. So it's that church there going through, and they have offices there, right? They have an administration office there. So to me, it's going to that office, not to the corporate one. We're going to try to go over to the particular church, which is part of the Holy See, and take our petition there and say, hey, I think we're supposed to bring it to you, not to the other building.
Okay, but let's look at this on you've got a civil action, and then you could have the criminal action. If you went to the administrative, that's civilly, where you would be bringing in an administrative complaint for them to review the action of one of their parties. Then, if they found it, then you would take it to the church, which would be the criminal side of having them charged.
You could, right. In fact, Roe had pointed out to me that in Illinois, on their civil cover action sheets, it has a list of all the different codes for whatever action it is you're going to use. And they have one on there for administrative review. It's like, that's interesting. I bet you could petition for administrative review to say, hey, there's something wrong with this case, and maybe that's what we need to do with it. Ask for administrative review by petition.
Well, yeah, because what you're doing is you're coming in and you're pointing out an administrative violation committed by their people, which goes back in what we have been teaching,
right,
and up under the federal tort claim, that before you can bring an action against them, you first have to exhaust your administrative remedies by going to the proper agency, giving them the opportunity to correct the problem before you sue them.
Right. And in the church, Rob, they call that hierarchical recourse. You went to the church, you didn't get the answer you wanted, you don't need to take that as the answer, you can go to their supervisor, who's the bishop. And they have a procedure for a thing called hierarchical recourse, hierarchy recourse, basically, going up the chain of command. But when you do this, they're supposed to appoint a advocate to you. Right, so that's what we're trying to do. Right? We're just trying to get to the point of we want to have hierarchical recourse. We believe our rights have been violated in the church, and appoint us an advocate, and then we'll talk to him about it.
Well, yeah, because see, that advocate should technically come in, shut everything down pending an investigation.
Right. Yeah.
And not allow you to be prosecuted and moving forward on any of this. That they should walk in, shut the case down, pending an investigation, and if they find violations, that your case is resolved, and now a case against them comes about, for them to be charged and excommunicated out of the system. Right.
We're looking for them to make a decree from the throne. We don't need a court case. Just issue the order, right?
Yeah.
Just issue the order. This is an administrative function. Execute the law. The law's been violated. Execute it. Right? Make them stop. And now you guys, if you need to have a court case, go ahead. But they've already committed the crime. And these things, like anybody who's a Freemason, they and anybody in organized crime now, because the Pope said it, they're ipso facto excommunicated, which means by the fact they're already excommunicated. There's no court hearing. It already happened. All that we don't have is the decree from the church to say they've been excommunicated. And that's what we want to make them do. Write the piece of paper now and excommunicate the guy. And, this just goes back to a story I heard a few years ago about somebody who went to see an archbishop, and he wanted out of the system, and the archbishop said, no, you don't. And he said, yeah, I do. And they went back 3 times or whatever, and next day the guy doesn't have a bank account or credit card or nothing else. His life was shut off. Apparently they can do it.
Well, this is what we need. We don't need us to be excommunicated. We need them to be excommunicated.
And unless we point them out, there's nothing they can do about it. We got to point out that there's been a violation. We're supposed to be the doorkeepers of the kingdom of heaven. That's what we are. The gatekeepers. Right? We keep the riffraff out. We're the bouncers. We got to send the devil out. That's all that works for me in the church, and it's just getting them to do that little part right there.
Yeah. Well, like I said, we're all hunting for avenues here, and religion goes back a long way. And religion was the foundation of all countries.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
So we ought to be able to go back into the diocese, the Catholic Church, because that was really the main church. Even though Christ created the Christianity side, and there may have been Old Testament side, but it was really the Catholic Church that really set the church foundation for really being recognized.
You know, it's the universal church. That's all Catholic means. Forget Roman Catholic. Early days, the universal church was recognized by Constantine, and by being recognized by Constantine, its decisions from its court got the force of law from the civil authority. It's been that way since the 3rd century, and it's never changed. They're first in line, first in time, and the rest of these people are just actors playing a part.
Yeah.
And, you know, we just need to, they've hid the keys of knowledge or whatever it is for us to find the one little crack we need to get in. That's why the walkway's narrow. It's got to be done in a particular manner, but when it's found out, it'll be relatively simple, and I don't think it's going to fight these cases. It's changing your status in a different. If you're the adopted son of God, then I want his domicile, right? Because I want his rights.
Yeah.
That's going, the kingdom of heaven here on earth. It's already here. It's just we allowed evil to take over, or not just us. This happened way before us. We're just the ones dealing with it. You know, but now it's our turn. What are we going to do? Well, I'm going to say you guys can't do that anymore. Your heretics have been excommunicated. I'm going to ask the church.
We need to find that document that we could put in and start following and getting the enforcement, because there's got to be enforcement out there somewhere that holds these people accountable. And everything runs back to the Vatican. Everything runs back to the Queen of England over in that area, but it still runs back to the Vatican.
Yep. And so again, to me, because George brought up this other avenue through this banner of peace, and I haven't had a chance to really look at it, I got to the point of saying, well, by gosh, they do have a tribunal for human rights violation. They got a way for you to put a petition in, and you can put it in as an individual, and it's supposed to go against the member state that's committing the crime. Well, that's the United States. It's pretty simple. I'm going to put it in and, just send them one and see what they say. I've sent all sorts of paper pointing out these crimes against humanity, and not anything's happened with them.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm doing it because I'm making their conscience aware, and when God wants to come and render judgment, he'll know what they did, right?
Yeah.
So we can't allow them to go through life saying they didn't know anymore. No, you can't do this. It's a human rights violation. I'm not arguing about if I was going 15 miles an hour over the speed limit. This is a human rights violation. The cop didn't sign the ticket, so there's no complaint.
Well, there was nobody that filed a complaint. There was no proper oath and no warrant for any of this when he stopped me. This is all purely commerce on their side of the fence.
Hey, he doesn't have a proper bond. We have a constitution in the state, how all this stuff is supposed to be done. And when you read the election law and look at how they do it, it's not like that. They don't follow the election law. Nobody's been elected. All the offices are vacated. And they're just actors playing a part of some. What they have is they have Judeo-Christian beliefs. Well, that's a double-minded person, right? You're either a Jew or a Christian. You can't be both. Either Jesus Christ, the Son of God, or he isn't. It's really that simple. Well, the one that says he isn't is the Antichrist. What are you doing hanging around the Antichrist, right? Get away from them Jews, man. They're the Antichrist. They're not. That's what the Apostle John said, right? If you won't call Jesus Christ the Son of God, you're the Antichrist. And we get pulled into these courts. This is all just history of England. I've done quite a few videos on it. I mean, it's just the history of England. The Magna Carta was an agreement between the Jews and the king. It had nothing to do with us, unless you're a Jew.
Yeah. Huh.
Right? It was a deal with the Jews and the king. So we get pulled into these courts that use this Judeo-Christian belief system where, we're going to use Jewish law against you now and Christian law now and little Jewish law now, and Right, false accusers are okay in Jewish law. I mean, Christ got condemned by false accusers. They didn't seem to have a problem with it. They didn't throw the case out. They crucified him.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you're dealing with. Anybody who believes he has Judeo-Christian beliefs, he believes, he can use this Old Testament law against you and can't do it. I'm not part of it. So when they do, because they're still going to do it, now it's persecution. Right, so now we're into all these different levels of, it's no longer the traffic ticket or the foreclosure. It's religious persecution, human rights violation, enslavement, that kind of stuff. And our court cases are just the evidence of the crime.
Yeah.
Now, who do we give the damn petition to? And that's why we're doing the things we're doing, just taking them to different places. I just don't believe that there's anything. I know there's nothing local and there's nothing state, and I don't believe there's anything federal. So, and you've read it in the law that there isn't, so then it must be international.
Well, that's the only thing that's left is the international side, and that's why they put everything under international law, is to put this under international.
Right, now, and there's a thought. We should go find an international law attorney and appoint him. Right, this is a matter of international law. Now we got things we can point at and say, look, this is human rights violation, international crime against humanity.
All right, but is this not what your chancery courts are supposed to be?
Yes, they're supposed to be the court of justice. Yes, should be the court of justice, but they hid it. But I can tell you this, you know where the chancery is at the cathedral. Right, at that church. They call them particular churches now. It's the cathedral church. It's the one that's different than the rest. And that's the one that's tied directly to Rome. And so I just think that whatever you want to do in the church should go through that building, not the one that looks like a frickin' business building.
The problem of it is, how many of these, what do you want to call them, preachers, fathers, deacons,
yep.
How many of them really understand this side of being able to use their office to hold accountability? That's our problem here, as bishops. Well,
first of all, the people that we would say are priests in these local parishes, they know enough to know they don't have any power, right? This is what we're finding out. Because they're not, if they were an ordained priest, they can do things that they can't do because they're not an ordained priest. They're just an ordained deacon. Right, that's it's a two-step function in the church. So they don't have all those powers. They're not they're just employees of the church. They're not holding an office. They're called secular priests of the world. Right, now there are some that are different, like the brothers, like the Benedictine monks, the Jesuits, all these brotherhoods. They're in the church, but they've taken vows of poverty and everything else, so they gave their property to the church. Right, they're under somebody else's jurisdiction. When we go in there, we're going to be lay apostles, just like the apostles. We're going to be the sovereigns of the church, and we're going to make sure that what happens in the church's jurisdiction is God's will, not somebody who wants to, persecute people. And so we're going to, where this church, once we find the court or we change our status, either way, for at least ourselves, it's pretty much taken care of. Now we just have to show others how to do it. But it'll be the same. It's not like it's 15 different remedies. There'll be one remedy, and this is what you'll have to do. And if you do that, boom, you get the status or you get the petition in or whatever it is. All right? That would only be fair. It can't be like it is now where no matter what you put in, they have a reason for not taking it.
Does that go back under that vow of silence on their side is maybe the reason why we can't get into these places?
Well, I believe all spirits can be tested, right? So maybe that's what it is. It's the testing of the spirits. Whatever it is, but what it really is, and the Pope has talked about this, the people doing this suffer from clericalism, right? They're a bunch of clerks sitting around. It's pretty good for them. They don't have to do much. They get to act like they're God. But they don't have the executive authority, and that's why you need to put in this recourse, because what it says about this hierarchical recourse, while it should give us a remedy, its main purpose is a vehicle for the bishop to have authority over his people to make sure they're doing the right thing. Right? If you don't put something in complaining about what they're doing, he has to assume everything is fine. You're happy with what you're getting.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So you have to complain. Their first answer is always going to be no. Their second answer may be no, but what will their third be? Right? Because in the Catholic Church, 3 is a powerful number.
Like the Trinity side of this thing.
Yeah. Like a guy I talked to out in Montana, he had gone down to the Chancery and had a long talk with him one day, and he's Presbyterian, I think he was. He said he had his little button on and stuff, so it was an interesting time going into a Catholic church. But he wanted them to record some piece of paper he had wrote. And he pushed it across the table, and the chancellor, this nun, pushed it back, and he pushed it to her again, and she pushed it back, and he pushed it again, and she got up, picked it up, took it across the hall, talked to somebody, and they put it in a file. Right? I don't know what they did with it, right? But they didn't push it back a third time. They got up and took it someplace and did something with it. Obviously, it didn't have any effect. He still got the same problem we do. But there's just something about, you can test the Spirit a couple times. But what we need to tell them is, look, I'm a consecrated vessel. I'm full of the Holy Spirit. And if you deny me, that's an unforgivable sin to deny the Holy Spirit. Blasphemy against the Holy Spirit to deny him. And it will not be forgiven in heaven or on earth.
Yeah.
Right? So that's, when we get down to the real spiritual level, we're an earthen vessel, consecrated to be a host for the Holy Spirit. That's what we are. And we're walking around with the Holy Spirit in us, and they are denying the Holy Spirit because they're, crucifying God or persecuting God. It's just on so many levels. They're damned if they don't change their ways, and that's why the Pope had told the Mafia before: if you don't change your ways, you're going to hell. Well, now he's excommunicated them, and Mafia has nothing to do with Italy. It's just organized crime.
Yeah, because at one time, you get back into the Mafia side of this thing, a lot of them were Christians or Catholics.
Right. Oh yeah. They like to think of themselves as good Catholics. They go to church on Sunday.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
They eat fish on Friday.
There you are, right? They'll do all the little things that need to be done, and it isn't just Catholics that do that. There's a whole bunch of people playing being a Christian that really aren't Christians. It's the devil doing what the devil does.
Well,
anyways, hey, we kind of monopolized the time, John. Sorry.
No,
you got anything else, Johnny?
This is what needed. Well, I was just going to say about the court. If we did a court action, it would have to go to the court of first instance, and then it could be appealed to the court of second instance. And I was told today the next step would be the Roman Rota.
Okay. Right.
But that could take up to 3 years, he said.
Yeah. Well, then then we don't want to do that. We want to have an administrative action, right? We want a declaratory judgment from the seat, just the bishop make a decision to make it go away.
Right.
Right? And we'll see what, right now, Roe had sent a petition for hierarchical recourse, and we sent it to the cathedral building, addressed to the diocesan bishop. It looks like they want to send it over to the diocese building where the bishop is, which is fine. We didn't know where he was, so we just sent it. So we don't know what they're going to do with it yet, but it's something I'm sure it's something they haven't seen before. And eventually we'll figure it out. We're going to make one of these guys talk. I mean, I was talking to a guy in Washington State. He's thinking of going to church because the bishop usually holds service on Sunday and just hand deliver it and serve them right there in church. Hey, you've been served. There's a petition for hierarchical recourse. Right? Take a picture. Oof.
Well, the thing is, if the Pope made a decree and he made the issue and he supposedly went in and stripped the immunities off of these people.
Mm-hmm.
Again, if he did this worldwide, it should fall back to the diocese, that we should be able to walk into the diocese and did Pope Francis make this decree? Yes, he did. Does this apply to the public officials in this country, the judges, governors, so forth, that is holding these positions of what the people understand? Well,
right.
Yes.
Right.
Then,
I'm right with you, Rod, but, there's only a few of us doing this, so more people that would go ask questions, that's how we'll get some answers, is 100 people go ask the same question, and we'll see what we came up with next week, right? And see what...
Yeah,
it's almost like when you look for this information online, you find a little bit on this website and a little bit on that website and a little bit over here, and, you got to kind of make a picture from it, and the only way we know is by going and asking the questions, so that's what we try to do. Yeah.
See, this is one of the things that I did do here some time ago, is I did file paperwork off to the Vatican. I did it to the diocese in D.C., and there are several dioceses over in the Vatican area, because I pulled their addresses. And I filed paperwork in for them to investigate and to, see what's going on here in this country, for them to address it. I filed 2 paperwork, so I didn't file a third one off yet, but if it takes, I filed 3, but I filed 2 off to these people already.
Right.
And I haven't heard anything on whether, Pope, whenever the Pope made the decree, does it apply to this country, like it states in here that he stripped these people of immunity, and where's the enforcement on his side of the fence?
Right. Now here's an interesting thing, that one other thing. Like if you try to send something to the nuncio of the United States, or for the United States, whatever it would be, right, the ambassador from the Vatican City State, United States, they also have an ambassador, the same nuncio level as this guy here in the United States, in this association of American states. They have their own nuncio. And so if the federal jurisdiction doesn't exist anymore, I'm just saying, maybe that guy doesn't really have any, he doesn't have any jurisdiction either, because the United States doesn't have any jurisdiction. It's over here in the international level. Just another nuncio that we could go to, that you could send the same paperwork to, that maybe he's the guy. We just need to get in the stream that goes to the Pope, right? When we find that one stream, it'll be over.
Because supposedly, if we went to the UPU, and I did this in Switzerland, we have sent several documents off to the UPU, which we're supposed to have jurisdiction over a lot of this. And again, it went unanswered from these people of not wanting to deal with the problem.
They don't want to do that. They will say they'll do like we're getting done by the church right now. They try to send you somewhere else. Go ask the clerk over there, right? You need to go to the Treasury office or whatever it is to get you out of their hair. And if you don't use the words that they want to hear, then they didn't hear what you said. We need interpreters, right? We don't speak the same language. We may be using the same words, but we got different definitions. We need interpreters.
Yeah. And the problem of it is the interpreter falls back under the Bar Association, and he doesn't want to sit down and interpret.
Right. So we're looking for somebody to interpret it in our favor, right? We just haven't found that jurisdiction where somebody agrees with us yet, but I think they exist, and I'm going to find them.
Because the church, the Catholic Church, from what everything's coming down, is a last resort, because they were the first to recognize, and they was the first to sit down and to tie in the world.
Yeah. But they didn't invent the nation states. This was invented by Freemasons. This idea of these nation states and godless societies, this is all the work of Freemasons. And the United States, the Constitution was written by a bunch of Freemasons, and they even say that it follows the Constitution of the Freemasons. It was written in 1717 or something like that, the Anderson Constitution. And it was set up to be a godless society. Well, at some point that has to fail, right? Because if you're not going to allow God into the system, then it's really just survival of the fittest, and whatever that means to somebody is what it means. And but how can somebody tell me I can't bring God in the courtroom? Who are you to tell me I can't, that God isn't here already? Right? That makes you a heretic. I'm afraid you need to go.
Well, yeah, especially when they're bringing in the Bible and you're putting your hand on it to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You can't very well bring the book in if you don't allow nothing else in.
Right, right. I think you need to raise your hand and say, I'm innocent of all charges, so help me God. Right? On and for the record, I'm innocent of all charges, so help me God, because there are no charges. There's no complainant. When you go look at the paperwork on that side and you see a line for the complainant and it's empty, nobody's signature, but there is a signature for a complainant witness, what that means is the witness is committing perjury.
Yep.
Right? Well, they didn't.
Yep.
Nobody signed the line for the complainant. There is no complainant. And anybody that tells you this shit like they tell us, we need to say, well, that's color of law and simulate a legal process, and that's a human rights violation. Right? I need to talk to your boss. Right? That's a human rights violation. Just tell them it is, and see if it shakes their boots, or put in more petitions or whatever it is. But it's not going into that court thinking you're going to beat a frickin' foreclosure, because you're not in court. They're not elected. And it's just a bar. They've got the system they're going to run, and you're going to do as you're told. Right? If you want to have the license, this is what comes with it. That's like a physician told somebody here recently, or a doctor, because they were talking about at the hospital you can only get chemo, or you can get radiation, or you can get surgery. That's your three choices. And so they were talking about all these holistic ways of curing, and the doctor's answer was, yeah, but I wasn't trained in that. Right? I'm a surgeon. I can only talk to you about surgery. Yeah. You come here, we're going to talk about surgery. That's what the system is. You can't get what you need. It's being withheld from you by a system of needing to have a license, and who gets to call the shots?
Well, that's the truth of the matter. The thing of it is, those that is in there is no congressional mandate ever created to have turned this over to these private associations.
No. It's like they left and somebody walked in and just started pretending. That's all it is. Right? It's in Michigan, we got a particular oath in the Constitution. If you're going to hold an office in the state of Michigan, this is the oath you take. Or if you're going to hold an office, yeah, this is the oath you take. And you go start looking at all the oaths that have been filed, and ain't one of them says what that says in the Constitution. Then you look closer and say, well, hell, there isn't even a notary seal or a witness on here. He just signed it himself, but there's no witness that anybody witnessed him doing it.
Well, see, that's something that we brought up a long time ago. It's under Title 22 CFR 9212 to 9230. It actually walks you through step for step that the person who gave the oath has to sign it, the person taking it has to sign it, and the notary has to sign it, and then seal it, and then it has to have a proper filing, and that it was filed properly. And they're not doing any of this.
Not any of that's done. Not a bit. And there's no official bond that's been, put with the treasurer like it says they're supposed to. And so the evidence is all around us. And when it's just my opinion, we quit looking at it as anything but what it is. It's just human rights violations. And our case is going to be the evidence. And now it's what jurisdiction do we give it to? And if you got an idea to try at the church, brother, go ahead and have at it. And if you don't like their answer, just say, is that your testimony? Right? You're taking their testimony for God. Is that your testimony? God wants to know. Because they don't want to do anything, Rod. I'm telling you, they don't want to either. And we just need to say, look, I'm not going to go somewhere else. I asked you to find out. Or you'll send them something, like to the moderator or the curia. And he'll send it to somebody else to have them respond to you, and just made them a third-party intervener in your request to the moderator. Right? So, first of all, I didn't really want to talk to them anyways. I want to talk to the moderator. But now that you're involved, well, then go ask the moderator this. If you don't, because when you ask them something, they're going to say, well, I don't know. Right? And it's like, people get in their head that they were trying to talk to this person they're talking to now in the first place. And no, you try to get a hold of the moderator, and he put this third-party intervener in the way. So make them go get you the answer. Or at least challenge them, right? And hopefully we eventually run into an angel, and they go put the seal on it, and, you know, let the good times roll.
Yeah. Well, like I say, no, it really comes down where with what we're doing here is we're really running out of options because we have exposed every aspect. They're not following any rules. We know they're not a government because I've got so many different rulings from the administrative courts that they are not government. They're private contractors. They're private employees. I've got the ruling from the 10th Circuit back in 2007 that came back in and stated that the United States of America, the State Justice Institute, and all these people were corporate appellees. So we're proving that there is no government of any type. That it is just a hostile takeover.
Yep, you got it. And they've usurped the police powers of a state office, and they're using those powers against you to put you in a private prison to hold you for ransom. I mean, that's all they're doing is kidnapping and holding people for ransom.
Well,
human trafficking.
The only problem is
or worse. Yeah, you're lucky if it's just for money.
Well, the problem of it is when they did the bankruptcy of 33, they stripped us of any money, put a price tag on us that they actually have the ability to get in and drain without attaching us to any of it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need us to rob us blind because they got full access to the account because they're the trustees of that account.
Yep. See, somehow we gave them power of attorney. We don't know how to undo that.
Well, the problem of it is that power of attorney came down whenever we was born and we didn't know any better, and our mom handed this over to the state, and they created that birth certificate and that Social Security number, and they tagged it with us, and that's how they pulled the trust out of this deal.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, and that was beyond our knowledge and our abilities to be able to give consent. This goes back to that Baby Act. Someone gave that to me here the other day.
Yeah. Well, there's a thing called the law of infants that says, you know, you can make an infant a party to a contract, and he can void it, or if it's voidable later, basically.
Well, the problem is once
void or voidable. That's what it is.
Once we became a ward of the state or trust of the state, we could no longer come back in because they don't recognize our side of this because it's like I brought up to some people here that's in trust law, and I asked them a simple question. I said, if you were to set up a trust for your kids, and you set it up as the trustee, you set it up as the administrator, and as the executor, could your kids come in and write a check or get into the account? They said no. I says, why? Because they're not a part of it. I said, that's exactly where we're sitting at. This is why we're not recognized in these courts, because if we are a ward to them, it doesn't matter what we put in, is they're not recognizing us, and the fiduciary trustee, which is that lawyer or the notary or whoever we're supposed to be able to get, is not doing anything in our favor in order to assist us.
Yeah.
So for us to try to expatriate ourselves or try to get ourselves out of our system would be in the same fashion that the kids were trying to get themselves out of the trust that their mom and dad created. They could not do it because the mom and dad set the trust up. So they would be without everything and anything, and they would have nothing to fall back on.
Yeah. But
see, that's part of the problem here, and that's what we got to get the people to understand, is this is the type of scam that was perpetrated on us whenever they did the bankruptcy of 33 in that Federal Reserve Act of 1913 when they handed us Federal Reserve notes.
Right, but this actually, it goes back 2,000 years, man. I mean, this is it didn't just start in 33, it was just continued in 33, down a particular path, good against evil, and this is where we are in 1933, right? And the devil's making his big play because it's the end times right now, and he's trying to destroy the church, and he wanted to put, the Freemasons said they were going to overtake the church. That was what their intention was, to try to destroy it from within, and blah, 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 blah. Well, the church is still here. They've had all that, and now some of us are waking up and say, well, let's go back and see if we can use this jurisdiction they have, because they have their own state, they have their own government, they have their own courts. Why don't I accept the citizenship just like a Jew can accept Jewish citizenship and be a citizen of the Holy See?
Well, see, yeah, you're right. This actually goes back into the Old Testament. It goes back before, because there is in the Old Testament, one of the guys that I know in Ohio gets into the biblical side, and it talks about the banking, it talks about the judges, talks about the lawyers and how they swindled the people and how they sold them into slavery, and then there was 70 years is supposed to have been a jubilation that came up through.
Right. The thing is, see, there are no Old Testament Jews anymore. That Christ left them desolate. In 70 A.D., destroyed the whole thing. It was gone. There aren't any Old Testament Jews. They don't have the books that give their lineage back to Adam like they used to have. All that shit was burned in the temple, so they can't say who their daddy is. So there's no Levitic priest. Right? What these are Khazarians who took on the Jewish religion because they like what the Talmud says they can do, which is pretty much anything. It's Talmudic law, which it says you can screw a Gentile in business or in the courts. That's just the law they have, right? I mean, it's their law. We don't need to be, well, we shouldn't have to be under it, but we may have found ourselves under it. With this idea of Judeo-Christian beliefs. You're either Jewish and don't believe that Christ has ever shown up, or you're a Christian who knows he's showing up and you're waiting for him to come again. But one says he's the Son of God, and the other one doesn't. And, that's where the rub is one believes he's Christ, the other one's the Antichrist.
Yeah, well, the reality of a lot of this stuff is okay, I believe that we need to go back and notify these different entities. But the truth of the matter is, it really comes down to us, the people, to deal with this issue. And I hate to get into the revolutionary side of this.
The church says, too, it's up to us, right? It's up to the laity to make the church what the church should be.
Yes, and it should be the process that if the people would wake up and they would start doing what we're trying to teach, get involved in what we're doing, start jumping on this wagon, these judges, public officials, whatever the de facto officers, all these people would realize that they got to live among us someplace. They don't have that fourth dimensional world that they pop in and out of.
Right, you're right. They're stuck here just like we are.
And they have to live by us and next to us somewhere. And if they don't like the neighbors, then you fix your problem here, because the neighbors may end up burning a cross in your front yard.
Yeah. Christ said that from the time of John the Baptist, we're no longer in the age of the law and the prophets, that it's now the kingdom of heaven, or the kingdom of God, right? And he was the mustard seed that started the kingdom of heaven here on earth, and that's what we're supposed to be under. But we allow ourselves to be pulled back into this devil-worshiping society, and until we say, no, we're not going to allow that, and get over the fear of, oh my gosh, what are they going to do to me? I'm going to go to jail or whatever. Well, that's called persecution. There's been people who have been pinned to a cross by persecution, right? So a couple days in jail is no big deal.
Well, yeah, people have been fed to the lions.
Yes, exactly, right? So be a martyr, take your licking, and go speak for Christ and see if they change their ways.
Well, see, this is...
And then tell them, I open this court in the name of the Lord, right? The Lord Jesus Christ, yes. And you are committing you're committing a human rights violation by what's going on here. You're all involved in organized crime. You're all excommunicated. Leave the premise. I don't know. So, anyways, I'm about talked out, guys. It's been a long weekend for me. I had a lot of work to do on my back, and I'm kind of wore out. So.
I understand, and I appreciate you coming on, because, yeah, we've been on here for about an hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah, and it's just enough to ponder. It's something we need to build on. It's just such a big subject. You can't do it all at one time anyways, and, it's little bites, little steps. And I'm just telling you where we are now. We're trying the stuff with the church to go to the diocesan bishop to say we want recourse against an administrative act that one of their people did, and yeah, that we should be able to find that in the courts we have now, but if we can't, well, I'm going to try to get it in the church. And,
well, yeah, I'm a firm believer in that because, again, it goes back into biblically, if you got a problem, you go to your neighbor and you go to the congregation, then you take it to the church.
Now here's the thing, Rod. The other thing is that when I was looking at the Civil Rights Act, the different acts, and in 1964, they created this office at the Department of Justice, actually the Department of Treasury at the time, or Department of somebody, not Treasury, Commerce. That's what it was, Commerce. It was called the Neighborhood Community Relations Bureau or Administration or something like that. And they're supposed to be the peacemakers, not the peacekeepers. They're supposed to make the peace. It's like, oh, you're going to force somebody to do something. Well, and they're the ones that if you have a hate crime or some kind of violation, you're supposed to bring it to them. And so Roe tried that. She went to talk to them in Chicago, and they said, well, we don't deal with individuals, right? We only deal with community groups. And so I was thinking, well, and that's kind of how we got back in the church. So, well, let's go to the church and say, you're a community group. I want to point out what's happening. And they told me they only talk to you, so let's get them out here. So if you're a member of, I'm just saying, everybody listen to this as a member of the church, you don't need to go to the Catholic Church. Go to your pastor and say, you're part of a community group, this is color of law, and I want you to get the civil, I have to find the name again, it's been a while since I looked at it, but the community relations something or other. It's part of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And they have jurisdiction to investigate human rights violations, religious persecution, things like that. But they don't want to talk to an individual, although that isn't what it says in their law. That's what they say. On that case, go get your church to go down there and do it. Get your pastor off his ass and get him down there to fight for your rights. You're a Christian. And then you'll know if he's a Freemason hiding as a Christian or is he a Christian. That's what we need to get in the head is the pastors, man. We got to get them thinking, hey, what are you guys doing to my people?
The thing is, I've talked to different pastors on this.
Yeah.
And I brought this up. And the first thing that they come up with, well, we're under a 501c that we cannot, otherwise we'll lose our tax exemption. We can't bring anything up against the government. We can't talk against the government. I said, whoa, wait a minute, back up here. I said, wait a minute, are you telling me that you are under a tax exemption here? She says, yes, we are. So what you're telling me by being a Christian, being under a tax exemption, that means they can't arrest us, right?
I agree. Right.
And no. If you, as a pastor, are not allowed to bring up any issues against the government for their wrongdoing, for you to get a tax exemption, then this tax exemption ought to sit down and put the Christians in a position where we cannot be stopped and arrested by any of them. That's how this should work.
Right. Yep, I agree. And you tell that pastor, say, well, if that's your testimony, put the church seal on it and give it to me. That you won't do it, that's fine. Just put it under your seal, right? And they won't do that.
No, they won't.
Right? And so we need to force them to think, say, look at, God's coming, brother. This is the test right now. We're here to test you. Right? What are you going to do when it's brought to you that human rights violations are happening against people of your parish and you had the power to do something and you didn't? Right? You got to answer to God for that. And some of these guys, I think it will make a difference. I know that some would say that about the 501c stuff, right? Say, well, we're not going against the state. This isn't really a court. That's the point. It's color of law and simulated legal process. It's just a private business acting like a court. That's what we're going against.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to go to the government and try to get relief. We're going to an agency in the Department of Justice. How can they say I'm going against the state? I'm going to the state to point out a crime. That's what I'm supposed to do.
Yep. Well, that's
right.
what we did with these SF-95s. We went into these different administrative agencies, bringing forth a claim against the prosecution and these other agencies for violating their supposedly job descriptions and congressional mandate. And some of the remarks that we've got back off of them is that these people, well, we're not involved in this. Well, thank you very much, because this comes under that tort claim, because as the administrative agency, under the tort claim, you were the ones that we were supposed to go through, and the moment you send me a letter back saying you can't get involved, you just now waive the immunity of these defendants that we're going to bring claims against.
Right. And one last thing, so this community relations thing about that is somehow it works in there because all these people are taking federal funding. Yep. They fall under the jurisdiction of these federal laws.
Yes.
Right? That say that you can't persecute and so forth, right? So they're all under that jurisdiction. It's just when you go talk to them, they say you need to be part of a community group or something like that. And I'm just saying, if somebody wants to go out, get your preacher and he'll go do it, we'll go talk to him and just show him it's all color of law and simulated legal process.
Well, see, this is what we brought up in D.C. in 2007. We went before some of the committees on the Committee of the Judicial Committee. When we went before Leahy and Conyers, when we started bringing some of this stuff up, said, well, we don't get involved in state issues because we're a federal government. There's a separation of powers here. I says, whoa, excuse me. Talk about the federal funding program under Title 23 CFR Section 1250. 40% goes to the political subdivision, and their constitutional lawyer says, oh, my God. He says, we do have, because the moment federal funding is involved, it becomes a federal issue. Right.
And I remember hearing you talk about that. I said, yeah, there you go. That's what Rod was talking about. They took the federal funding, and so they're under this jurisdiction, and so they, for that, even though these are all corporations, because they take federal funding, their officers are under the jurisdiction of these laws.
Exactly. So they've got to come in compliance with it, and that's why we can do those SF-95s on the state level and run them on the federal level, because they take that federal funding. But not only that, is because they come under that 14th Amendment, Sections 2 and 3 of that public office of holding that position under the federal guidelines. So that puts them under federal no matter how they want to look at it.
Right. So, okay, well, listen, I'm going to be back on church stuff tomorrow and more on this thing from the Association of American States. I got to talk to George and have him kind of fill me in on the things I missed. But, we'll just see where it goes. We're going to keep trying here, and, I'll send out what I do. That's what I normally do videos on it. But I'm just a researcher, right? I don't have an answer. I'm looking for an answer.
Well, that's what we're doing. We're looking for answers, and what we come up with, we try to give out up to date.
And God bless you, brother. That's what, if more people would talk about what they've done, because I know a lot of people have done things and had shit happen to them in court that it may not mean anything to them, but somebody who's listened to enough stories, it would mean something to. Say, oh, okay, and now I understand what's going on. We need those little pieces of information.
Yes.
So,
well, I want to thank you for coming on here, Rob. I appreciate it. Now, you have a good day and have a good week.
I appreciate it. See you, John. Take care, guys. Take care, Rod.
Thank you, Rob.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. John, you got anything that you want to do a conclusion on this with what you've done?
Man, not really. That was a whole mouthful. We've been going over this stuff for weeks and weeks and months.
Okay.
And, So, no, that's pretty good. That's probably I'll leave it right there.
All right. Well, I thank you for coming in, and we'll talk to you later. Keep in touch. As you get new information here, get with me, and we'll get it broadcasted.
Will do. Thank you, Rod.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, another update of another avenue for us to run down and make efforts of filing paperwork in. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to exhaust all of our avenues for accountability. But the reality, it really comes down to us. We could try, but they don't. It really comes down to us. We're the ones who's going to have to fix the problem. And it can be done peacefully through petitions. It can be done peacefully through SF-95 forms, by reporting to these different agencies, by filing in complaints, human rights issues, because that's really what we're dealing with, because we're proving that there is no rule of law. The courts aren't following anything. What they're relying on is our ignorance. They're relying on our lack of knowledge for them to come back and say, well, if you would have went here, or if you would have, but we're covering this. I am going to have another call probably here tomorrow with a lady out of California that is a retired attorney. Hopefully, what we talked about here today, she got into some of the ecclesiastical side of this thing. She got into some of the trust side of how the courts are operating. But we also got into the fact that none of these people are taught law in college. They're taught theory and they're taught concept. They're not taught law because there is no law. She is working with some clients that basically they don't give the court jurisdiction. They don't submit. The only problem that she is finding is that we, the people, are taking a hell of a beating. And I literally mean a beating. Fingers are broke, arms, legs, a beating. Going into court, these judges threaten, intimidate. They push everything to the max. And if you can hold out and go through everything they want to dish out and never give consent, then sometimes the judge will sit down and say, you know what, I'm going to dismiss your case because you're right, we didn't have jurisdiction. And ladies and gentlemen, that should never, never be the case. There is no such thing as beating us out on the street, breaking bones, being threatened and intimidated, and because you was able to stand your ground, and finally some judge who wants to be honorable after putting you through the torment and through the intimidation, finally pat you on the back and said, you know what, you passed with flying colors. You didn't allow us to intimidate you. That should never be allowed. This is part of what her and I talked about here today. This is part of what her and I talked about, of what has happened to some of her clients. Ladies and gentlemen, there's got to be a better avenue than this. We brought up before, Richard Cornforth brought up 80,000 complaints during Prohibition put a stop. We start filing complaints into the administrative side. Start bringing up human rights violations. And Rob Ryder's right. These are human rights violations. That's what we're sitting here saying under the Trade with the Enemy Act. These are human rights violations under the Geneva Convention and even under Nuremberg. These are human rights violations. We need to start calling them what they are. We need to quit defending ourselves in these courts and start pointing out every one of their errors and every one of their procedural violations and start calling them human rights violations. Because, ladies and gentlemen, there is never a complaint ever filed against us in any of these courts by any party. Never. It's always the state of. This talk I had with the attorney was private, but we are going to get her on the air, and I'm going to record because I want to sit down and talk to some of these people before I bring them on. So I know what I'm going to bring on is going to be something worthwhile, because I have been given people's names that, Rod, you really need to go talk to these people. And what I have, they don't have what I was told. They was exaggerated of their abilities. You people that know me know when I talk, I will hand you where it is coming from for you to be able to read. I don't need to tell you that under some statute someplace that someone told me that this is how this works. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been a major problem with the movement out here. And some of the people that have tried to hook me up, when I went back and talked to the people, okay, where is this information? Well, I got this off somebody who got it off of somebody who found it off somebody. That is not the type of stuff we need here. We need hard information. Going to the diocese, going to the Vatican side of this thing is an avenue for us to go back and push. And it's a worthy avenue because under the Avalon Project, you get into Christopher Columbus, whenever he was set sail, and Jeanette brought this up, is that the church ordained him. And when he claimed the New World, he claimed it under the church. And all the inhabitants were children of the church. This goes back in the Avalon Project, which is Yale University. But this is some avenues we're going to get into. And I think we all need to participate because, ladies and gentlemen, 1 or 2 people out of 300 million people is not going to fix the problem. I was told if we had the square root of 1%, it would start. And the square root of over 300 million American people, we had 1%, the square root of that 1% would be devastating in these courts. It would flood these legislators. These demonstrations that have went into D.C. through the Tea Parties, the Million Mom walk or the Million Man walk, had they went into the legislation and filled up the halls of all 6 Senate and congressional buildings, which is three each, if they would have filled these hallways up, you would have seen results. As long as you stand outside and you're not in their office, they don't care. Watch the video that we did here several years ago going into D.C. while we was being filmed and the results of a few of us walking in. We got immediate attention. Imagine having 1 million or 2 million people walk these halls and fill up these congressmen's offices and demand a hearing and demand a review. That's where it's at, ladies and gentlemen. That's where it's at. I want to thank you for being on here. I'm going to give her a call here tomorrow, and her and I got to set up a time that we can set up a private call. We'll do another private call here sometime tomorrow. Right now, there is a 3-hour time zone difference between her and us. So I've got to set it around her time so it would be good for her to be able to come on. But I want to let her talk. I want to let her to be able to sit down and explain some of the stuff that she's doing, some of the stuff that she's exposing that can be done without walking into a courtroom to get cases dismissed. This is part of what we're after. There's got to be avenues to get these cases dismissed by certain paperwork being put in. That, I'm not real sure where that video is at. Number 10. But ladies and gentlemen, it's got to take us, and I want to remind you of the camp meeting on July 25th, 26th, 27th, this month, in 2 weeks, down here at Cross Country Camp Grounds here in North Carolina, just outside of Denver. Ladies and gentlemen, we're supposed to have an international broadcast team come in and record this as part of the documentary that I did here several weeks ago to document what we are exposing internationally to get international attention. This is a necessity of what we're doing, but it needs to be us. But we also need international attention on this. The cost for coming in is $200 for the weekend. That's for this. That is for the judicial conference. And you got to pay for your lots. If you want to stay in a motel, you can. There's motels like 8 miles up the road in either direction, roughly 8 miles. The lots, if we get over 10 people, there's got to be a reduction. I think it's like $29. going to be reduced down to $29 per night. The number for calling is 1-800-852-4840. Ladies and gentlemen, the education level that we're teaching here has to be understood, and I'm going to get into the congressional records of pointing this stuff out to you. It's one thing of talking it; it's another thing to actually show you. Some people, it takes the ability to see it to comprehend it, and I understand that. But once you read it, once you see it, and that's when it soaks in, then you'll get a clearer position of what we're doing and how we're fighting the system and how we need to come back and fight the system and why it is important that we go back in and file an administrative claim against the agencies of anything that happens to us or on behalf of anything that happens to somebody else in order to support, because of the amount of people that has filed a SF-95 tort claim into the federal court system. I believe this really has them in a nervous twitch, because by them not doing anything with it has actually allowed them open for you all to go back in and bring a civil rights claim against them for that public office that they're supposed to be holding that they don't hold. This opens them up for a huge lawsuit. This has never been done. Nobody's ever come after these people the way I have. Nobody's opened this door up. We've seen a lot of bits and pieces and a lot of things here. And it's like I've told several people, you can have all the parts to a Mercedes scattered around, but that doesn't mean you have a Mercedes. It's when you put the parts together is when you get your Mercedes. Having a piece is not a Mercedes. That's just a piece. And this is what we have been trying to do on this show, is put all these pieces together. Where you're not walking in with a hubcap, or you're not walking in with a lug nut, or you're not walking in with a rim. We want you to drive in with a Mercedes and sit here and say, here's the Mercedes. Here's the whole piece of the puzzle. Or here's 95%. I may not have the carpet in it, or may not have a wiper blade on it, but yet we're still going to get all this stuff. We need to make these people nervous. It can be done through petitions. It can be done through paperwork. It can be done through peaceful means. And that's what we're trying to do this through, is peaceful means. Ultimately, they're going to push this on their side for violence. They've already demonstrated this. And part of what this lady's going to talk about is how some of her clients got the snot beat out of them. They're trying to be peaceful. The violence has already started on their side. It's already started on their side. It may have to come down to our side. But if we do the peaceful side of this thing to start with, and show that we're trying to come in honor with this, then they really don't have a whole lot of choices but to break the law. We're trying to pull international help. We're trying to pull international judges. We're trying to get somebody that's willing to step up to the plate and say, we're willing to hear the case. And the first step we're trying to do is the administrative side of this thing, of a tribunal, to bring an administrative tribunal in to present the arguments for them to come back and say, okay, there's justification here, and pull these people off the bench. Then bring them up before a grand jury and try them for war crimes and humanitarian crimes. This is what this international program is all about, doing a documentary, is to do this internationally to show the world that the United States is committing human rights crimes here in this country. In the same fashion that we're supposedly sticking our nose in other countries' businesses and pointing the finger at them about their violations. This country, we're being sold. We're being marketed. We're a commodity. We're one of the few countries in the world that treats its own people as inventory. But the 25th, 26th, and 27th this month, here in a couple weeks, you could be here. Carl's going to talk about, my brother's going to talk about the SF-95s. My brother's going to get into some of the information that he's teaching. I'm going to get into what I teach. This new information on tort claims, new information on the administrative, new information on Trading with the Enemy Act. Sit here and show you how they're bringing this in, why they're bringing this in. The Social Security Act, of how they have us sold. Alien Registration Act, why we have to have a birth certificate. The whole 9 yards. We're trying to get in as much as we can for the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But Friday night's basically just going to be to get together, and Saturday, Sunday is going to be the education time. It's to your benefit that you show up. It's to your benefit that if you can get me external hard drives, send them to me with postage paid. If you want to stick a donation in it, stick a donation in it, because the amount of information that you're getting, had you had to go out and do this yourself, like I said, you're talking $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 worth of information, of time and stuff. We're not asking to be paid, but donations is worth my time for what we're doing. And it takes about 6 hours to download my information onto an external hard drive. But send me an external hard drive, postage back, insurance back, so you get it back. This way you could track it. Send it to P.O. Box 435, High Shoals, that's Highshshoals, High Shoals, North Carolina, 28077. Get this sent out to me, and we can get this information sent out to you so you can have it. Because, ladies and gentlemen, information is knowledge. Knowledge is power. Don't wait till after the fact. Do it and understand it before you ever need it. Do it before you ever need it. I want to thank you for being in. Y'all have a good night. Good night.